Analysis from political analyst Lebohang Pheko. Finally, the political parties, rather opposition parties, get what they want. What do you make out of this, Lebohang?
It's not surprising. I think what is surprising is that there has actually been this much momentum that has been gathered in quite a short space of time. What's quite interesting, of course, is that it also aligns quite clearly with the fact that there is a lot of internal turmoil within the ANC as a party, as the governing party, and this aligns with the opposition, the fact that there's a huge groundswell of dissatisfaction with President Zuma, both within the ANC and outside the ANC. If he ignores this right now, I do think that the conclusion of his political and presidential career will be extremely untidy, extremely unbecoming, but possibly inevitable.
This is quite the first time, and one can use the analogy that President Jacob Zuma is not backtracking and he's not seeing the wall that is behind him. So it looks like the wall is coming close to him. If he were swimming in a river, we would say that he's ignoring the crocodiles that are facing him, the NEC meeting tomorrow, motion of no confidence, a possible impeachment. Does he have anywhere to go?
One can never predict with Mr. Zuma. However, his space for maneuver at this moment is shorter and smaller than I have seen it ever. The internal politics of the NEC, for a change, don't seem to be favoring him. He doesn't have unanimous support, or uncharacteristically, he has not been able to galvanize the kind of support within the NEC and the NWC that would inevitably see him surviving yet another attempt to recall him. Secondly, I think that the court of public opinion has swung so far against him, and this has been characterized even more so since Mr. Ramaphosa became the ANC president. Now, the two centers of power have been playing themselves out very uncomfortably so far, and it seems as though the two centers model is untenable. It also appears that the optics, the noises, the actions that have been taken since Mr. Ramaphosa became ANC party president have seemed to assuage and the sense in which this country is completely without an order and without an anchor. So, for example, what has been happening around the ESCOM investigations and so forth, the kinds of good optics that many people have wanted to see for a long time, we're actually seeing the possibility of heads rolling where they need to be rolled. We've seen the possibility of accountability for wrongdoing, which is something that many of us have been waiting for and hoping for. And we've also seen the possibility of the whole notion of state capture being untangled in a tangible way, possibly even with criminal charges and so forth. So the swell and the momentum that has seemed to have coincided with Mr. Ramaphosa's ascension to the ANC presidency, coupled with Mr. Zuma's own unwillingness to admit any culpability for anything, any wrongdoing over the last 8 or 9 years, including the 883 charges that are still outstanding and pending against him, seem to illustrate a man who is completely adrift of his own waning popularity, if ever there was any, adrift with the court of public opinion, adrift or disinterested with the internal fissures and internal combustion that his stubbornness and his stubborn reluctance to remove elegantly and with dignity from the office of the presidency seem to be bringing about. So for all of those reasons, this is an extremely crucial political moment for South Africa and for the office of the president.
There's a call for consistency here. He commended former President Thabo Mbeki when he was recalled for stepping down so with dignity and gracefully so. And he said that President Mbeki put the country first than himself. Right now, he's refusing to step down.
He's doing the absolute opposite. One thing that's quite interesting about that is also the Mbeki recall set a number of dangerous precedents. Number one, it illustrated that the ANC does not have to subject the question of the presidency to the electoral mandate. It can actually deal with it internally, should it wish to do so. Nor does it need to subject it to parliamentary processes. It can deal with it internally, should it wish to do so. So the room to say that only Parliament appoints the president is quite dishonest, which is an argument that I've heard some Zuma supporters purporting over the last few days. I've also heard the argument that the president must see his term through to the next election. Again, the Mbete precedent shows that this is not necessarily a fact, and I think that anybody who has, I've always said, and I'll say it once more, that one as a leader, as a public official, a public servant, or whatever, must not subject any other person to a policy, a process that they themselves would not be willing to be subjected to. So in the same way that it seemed to be convenient at the time for President Mbeki to be, in the opinion of many analysts, including myself, unnecessarily recalled a mere 6 months before the election, and yet this went through. It seemed at the time politically expedient for the Zuma wave. In the same way, now that that wave has swung a different direction and the pendulum has swung against him, he has to be willing to subject himself to, indeed, placing the needs, the interests, and the love of the people first, if indeed he has the interest of the people first. And that has been tested many, many times over the past few years.
Yeah, well, earlier, ANC Deputy Secretary General Jesse Duarte also considered that the party's inability to take a decision on President Jacob Zuma is creating problems on the ground. And secondly, can we say now this indecisiveness of the party, of this envisaged dignified exits of President Jacob Zuma, is really costing the party, and it's going to end up, the party may end up with an egg in its face?
Well, yes. So this whole idea of dignity at all costs is one that I'm personally finding it quite difficult to grapple with. I'm finding it difficult to grapple with for several reasons. Number one, the fact that there have been so many crude violations of basic constitutionality, constitutional propriety, violations against the office of the public protector, and so forth, and report after report which would have indicated that, in fact, his, the presidency and his tenure are subject to strict, scrutiny, absolute scrutiny, and in some cases deep sanction. And in many jurisdictions in the world, even 10% of what President Zuma has subjected South Africa and its people to would have been cause enough for his removal or for his voluntary exit. And I think that this kind of this flagrant disregard of due processes, of constitutionalism, also has the hallmarks of some form of constitutionally trying to constitutionally bring about some form of a dictatorial, authoritarian state. So, dismantling the checks and balances which are supposed to protect the people of South Africa and protect the executive from overreaching in its powers. We've also seen the increase of scope reach. So the judiciary now being the de facto beacon and the de facto placeholder for order, for adjudicating issues of state importance. So, political parties are literally camping at various expensive legal firms in this country and camping at the Constitutional Court. One might even argue that the de facto head of state in this country is Chief Justice Mogoeng. Now, all of this sense of disorder and this lack of clarity around where the office of the presidency and his powers begin and end, an encroachment into broader executive powers, broader constitutional powers, is extremely uncomfortable, and I don't think it's tenable at all. This constitution, if you recall, was drafted with a particular personality in mind, and that's the unfortunate thing about it, is that we should never draft any piece of legislation or constitution that is supposed to have posterity value whilst staring at somebody who seems to embody, to some people, the values, the best values of leadership. And at the time, people were staring at Mr. Mandela, who to many people was the template of a good leader, and without anticipating that in future there would possibly be somebody who might be authoritarian, who might be less pliant, who might want to actually take the constitution and do different things with it. I'm fully convinced that if President Zuma were living in a different country, he would by now, but no doubt, have tried to extend his term of office under the misguided mask that the people still love him, the people still want him, neither of which seem to be true, either within his party or outside his party. So I think that for the way in which the constitution was drafted did not anticipate the authoritarian strongman tactics that Mr. Zuma seems to embody, which is extremely unfortunate. But the good thing is that despite all of this, we have a vibrant parliamentary democracy. We still have a vibrant opposition party politics, which seem to have become even more resuscitated over the past few years, and due in no small part to the resurgence of the EFF, the rise, in fact, of the DA, etc., etc. So the character and nature of our politics increasingly don't seem to be able to, are not willing or able to babysit and to construct
thank you so much,
a one-party state.
All right, I think that you have made your point. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your analysis. That's Lebohang Pheko, political analyst, talking to us live from our Pretoria studios. We're going to take a break.